So week one of the Battlefield beta is done, and man, was it a fun one. It just felt really, really good to be back to a real Battlefield title that's set during a time frame and in an era of war that we are more accustomed to, and like the likes that we saw in 3 and 4. And it just felt really good to go back to that. It truly feels like a mixture of Battlefield 3 and 4. I feel like certain aesthetics and the look and kind of the sounds remind me of Battlefield 3, but then a lot of the UI and other things kind of remind me of 4. So, but in general, it just feels like kind of a back to where a lot of people fell in love with this game about 10 plus years ago, 12 plus years ago, something around there. So just to preface this, I did not really use any vehicles. I was mostly playing infantry the entire time, outside of the occasional tanking here or there. I don't even think I got into a helicopter, but so a lot of my reviews is going to be kind of based on that aspect of it. So I do want to kind of start off with some of the things that I loved about the beta, and makes me want to just keep on playing. And really excited to hop into the beta come Thursday for week 2 and some of the new modes and maps that we're going to see. So the first thing I want to say is just the audio is absolutely incredible. It is so good. The directional audio is amazing. And this is kind of honestly, even in the Battlefield's worst games in the franchise, all had pretty damn good audio. Obviously Battlefield 1 was one that you can really think of with the amount of immersion it would give you. But even to the likes of, I'll say Battlefield 5 was probably the worst, but Battlefield 2042 actually had some pretty solid audio, especially in terms of footstep audio. Now, the footstep audio in this current game does need to be tweaked and worked on, because it is extremely kind of hard to hear. I rarely ever hear anybody come behind me unless it's like a really quiet moment in the map, like it's something like King of the Hill or Domination. But even in those ones, it's just super hard to hear. And I've tried the multiple different presets, and I can't get the right one to really hear. But overall though, in terms of the atmospheric audio that they are providing into the game, the music and all that stuff, it's absolutely great. And then the same goes for the visuals. The visuals just look amazing. Like I said, very resemblance of the aesthetics of Battlefield 3 in my opinion, more so than 4. And I like how they're able to incorporate the background a lot more into the battles and the fight scenes. Obviously that was something that they had to do later on in 2042, because if you guys remember in the beginning of 2042 there was like nothing happening in the background. It felt like now this feels like you're part of this bigger, grander conflict that's happening around the map of the game, which really adds to the atmospheric setting of everything. Also too, it's very detailed in particle effects. I feel like there's particle effects everywhere, especially when you're talking about the destruction, the amount of dust everywhere. Sometimes it's even hard to see sometimes, but from a visual standpoint, it looks great. And to me, it is the most immersive Battlefield that we've seen since Battlefield 1. I wasn't super immersed. I didn't really feel like I was in World War II when it came to Battlefield 5. And I don't know if it's because of the lack of certain flags, obviously, that they took out of the game. It almost didn't even feel like World War II. And as for 2042, and I do want to preface this, I actually thought the idea of the time frame of 2042 was actually interesting. And it's really a shame that the story sucked, the little story that they had, and also the game in general. But I wasn't against the time frame, honestly, because I do think that would have been an interesting kind of near future thing they could have done. It's just, obviously it's a discussion for another day. But, and then I do want to get into gunplay here. This is a little bit more of a hot, I've seen some complaints obviously in terms of movement and all this other stuff, but I don't necessarily agree with them on a lot of it. I do feel like this game kind of brings back that more traditional Battlefield movement. There's no tac sprint. It's very reminiscent to 3 more so than 4. I felt like 4 was a little slower than 3 in terms of movement. I felt like in 3 you could do a lot more, and it kind of reminds me of that. And I feel like the only people that are truly complaining are the people that forget that Battlefield is an arcade shooter at the end of the day. And we were able to do a lot of this similar stuff outside of the slide, obviously, that we were able to do in Battlefield 3. Now, Battlefield 5 slide I thought was pretty solid. I do think at times the slide in Battlefield 6 is inconsistent, and from what we heard, it is a bug. You're not supposed to be able to slide as far as you can, but then there's times where the slide just feels awful. So obviously things are going to get tweaked there, but in terms of the overall movement and the mechanics of the game, I have no issues with it. And I think the only people that have issues with it are people that want to play milsim games for some reason and try to treat Battlefield as that milsim game, and Battlefield's not that, and they're trying to make that something's not. Now, don't get me wrong, Obviously, I feel like COD movement, it's absurd and ridiculous, and it's just so dumb that the way you're able to move in that game. And I'm glad, I feel like this game has been able to provide that little bit of balance of obviously modern movement that we want to see, but not so overboard to what we saw prior in other games in the FPS space, like Call of Duty, for example, or plethora of free to play games where it's just all over the place. I actually have a good feeling about this. There's no jump shooting. It's not, I mean, it's possible, but it's kind of difficult. But yeah, at the end of the day, it is Battlefield. Positioning is key. You can have the greatest movement in the world, but if you're getting out positioned, that is what it is. Battlefield prides itself on that aspect. Now, in terms of the guns, the gun audio is amazing, and just the way they feel, they're super punchy, at least in terms of the assault rifles and the snipers. The snipers just feel meaty when you shoot those things and you're able to like hit that exact shot. Now, the carbines and the SMGs, terrible. Absolutely terrible. I might be wrong in this, maybe because I didn't use them enough and was able to unlock enough attachments for them, but the carbines almost felt useless. I don't even think I rarely recall ever getting killed by a carbine like the M4A1. The SMGs, I think I've seen a little bit here and there, but those are just bad too. And if obviously the whole debate of the open and closed system, that's something I want to get into in a second here, but that could greatly affect how people use classes if they want to go forward with a closed system. The guns is going to make it tough. So I will say though, the customization of the guns is amazing. I love the customization. I actually really enjoy the point system. I think it's pretty fair. It's not too over the board, too over the top, because I think from what we've seen in games like Delta Force, for example, it's awesome for people like me, but I can understand the overwhelmingness for other people. And even sometimes for me, it's a little overwhelming, because part of the game is also to play the game, not to sit there and tweak settings forever and ever. Now it's there for people who want to have it, but I do think Battlefield does a great job, in Battlefield 6 that is, of kind of working that perfect balance, because I do like the point system, and the attachments do feel like they make a difference for sure. I feel like it's actually kind of changing the weapon in a good way, and also the weapon stats are laid out perfectly for you. In 2042, those weren't there. It was just a bar that you kind of had to guess and data mine to see the correct stats. Now they're just showing you the stats, which is great, and I love that. Now let's get into the maps. This is the final good thing I want to talk about. Is like, I really like the Cairo map. I love that map. It reminds me of Strike at Karkan back in Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 2. I love the urban setting, but it also still kind of has that outdoor kind of aesthetic to it, where you're going to have some light vehicles like tanks, obviously no jets or helicopters, but I love those kind of maps, because obviously I'm a little bit more of an infantry player. I do like attack chopper here and there, but I don't want necessarily purely infantry maps. I do like light vehicles mixed in there, and Cairo is just kind of right up that speed for me. And I think there's a ton of lanes that you can use, a ton of different flanking routes. It's not just all kind of funneled into one place. I felt like they did a really good job across all the different game modes for that map, working on the flow of how people want to approach certain objectives, and I think that is amazing. Now, in terms of Liberation Peak, that map is god awful, and it just needs to be sent back to the drawing board. My god, that map is terrible, and I'm talking more so from a breakthrough perspective, because that's the game mode I mostly play. And that one, obviously, I'm sure all of you have seen the memes of the sniper glint all over the hillside, where it's absolutely impossible to see. It looks like you're looking at the Milky Way with how many stars that are over there. And there's just too many head peaks, too many of this, and it's also impossible for the attacking side. It's like, if you're defending, you're going to win. I rarely have gotten through the first sector defending or attacking. I've only made it to the end, and this was on the defending side where the attacking team made it to the end. But that ending part where you're at this like castle looking thing and everybody's going uphill, there is no way anybody can win that. So let me know if you guys have been able to win that map. That map, just to me, and from what I've heard from the Conquest perspective, a lot of people kind of say the same thing, where it's just not a good map. It's a terrible map, and you think they would have brought another map on the beta side, but it kind of shows how great the game is, that even though that map is bad, that people are still enjoying the beta no matter what. Now I kind of want to get into some of the things that I found that were bad and I think need tweaking, and obviously this is stuff that's going to be worked on. Some of this stuff is getting addressed, but kind of some minor inconveniences that I really didn't like. And I will say, overall though, my main issues with the game basically comes down to balancing. I don't feel like nothing's wrong with necessarily the core aspect of the game itself. It's really just the balancing, and I feel that that's a good thing. If you have a game that doesn't necessarily have like core issues with it and it's just balancing, that stuff going to get worked out because that stuff's inevitable. Obviously things are going to change as they add content and as they add weapons or whatever it might be. Balancing is going to be inevitable that you have to do that. Now, obviously, the big thing is the shotgun, which they already addressed. The vehicles, which is a big thing. Like I said, I can't necessarily attest to that, but from what everybody's saying, that it just feels off. Even 2042 had better vehicle movement and the controls, and this one just feels really bad. I will say from the tanking perspective, not that I'm a big tank player, but it feels roughly the same to me. I do feel like maybe it's a tad slower, but obviously that's something that needs to get reworked because clearly everybody has a problem with it. Like I said, I mentioned earlier, the SMGs and the carbines need to get reworked entirely. They need to pick a lane in terms of the open and close system. I will say this, I don't mind either. I don't care which way they go, honestly. Like, I think some people are a little bit more passionate on this. I'm going to have a little bit of a hot take here, and I actually prefer the open system. And my rationale behind that is I think people are more likely to play the class that they need versus the gun that they want to use. Because I think the current situation, that's what happened for a long time, is that people would neglect, especially support was one of those for a long time, if there was a medic in that game, that it just wouldn't get touched and it would become a nightmare just to find an ammo bag. And I think by allowing an open system, it opens the door for people to play different roles and not have to be tied to that. Now, I do like the idea that DICE is going to take in terms of, okay, let's give passive abilities to the gun that you want to have. So if you want to kind of promote that class more. But I mean, let's be real, if we want to talk milsim, like outside of recon, obviously, like is an engineer in real life not going to have an assault rifle? They're only going to be tied to an SMG, you know? So I get it's something that they've always done. And at the end of the day, I don't mind if they close it because it's something that they've always done. But I'm not against it. I actually enjoy the idea of an open weapon system that I can solely focus on a weapon that I want to use and not one that I have to just because of the specific map entails this specific scenario. Now, obviously, footstep audio is another one. Graphical glitches, which are things going to get worked out in case maybe these things are already fixed. That was something that happened a lot where I had to basically kill myself because my screen was flashing black constantly. A big thing for me was hit reg just feels off, and a lot of the servers just felt like it was just lagging. And sometimes I would get killed around corners, or sometimes bullets just weren't registering. I don't know if that was anybody else is experiencing that. And obviously the big one is the time to kill. I think I agree with most people that it's too fast. It needs to be slowed down just a smidge, not too much. I think it is just a tad too fast. And if they can increase that time to kill a little bit more, I think we're perfect. We're in there, we're in the sweet spot. But overall, I think this game has the potential to be one of the best FPS games in the generation. And I know that's speaking volumes if we consider like the PS5, Xbox Series X generation, and so on and so forth, these past like 5 years. If this game can deliver from what we've seen in the beta and from what we've seen in these events and so on and so forth, and the amount of support and love that people are having for this and the time that it's being released to COD's lowest moment, this could be one of the biggest FPSs to hit this generation, like I said. And I'm not including the previous ones and all that, but it just feels like the stars are aligning for EA here. They're finally listening to people. They're finally going back to their roots, and everybody else seems to be a little down right now. So yeah, man, let me know what you think down in the comments below. I think they're on a great track. I'm excited for week 2 that's coming up in the next couple of days and the full release. But yeah, if you guys want to see more content like this and you're interested in seeing more, please feel free to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, and yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out, everybody.